it's the pull between trying to be a spiritual person, whether it's a Dharma student, whatever term we want to use, but being a spiritual person versus, what does it being a spiritual person? What does it mean to being a virtuous person? And what does it mean to be just a normal person? We make a lot of excuses to not practice. like, oh, it'll do him good. He shouldn't cheat us. So, we better get an attorney because he's, it's good. It's not good for him to be cheating us. Do you know what I mean? So I find that approach, and we can't say it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that it tends to be a rationalization to justify our the afflicted minds that we're trying to be free of. Do you know what I mean? So this is not hard. I mean, to actually become free is not that easy, because it goes against normal conventional thinking, typically, not every time. Now, let me give you two different examples. There's nowhere it says that one should be exploited or taken advantage of, right? No, so it's the story of the Buddha as a bodhisattva when he was on a ship with 500 people, and through his clairvoyance, he could see that the captain was going to sink the whole ship to kill everybody. So the bodhisattva, in that case, did take action and killed the captain. But there's a couple things there that are really important. One is that he was a bodhisattva, and if we know what that, we can talk about what that means, but it comes down to a state of mind, right? So it's not the action. It's not the action of getting an attorney or not getting an attorney. It's really not exactly that. Another example was more closer to me was I've been on the board of the FPMT, foundation, which Tutu Norbaling is a member of, right? Been on the board a long time, and we had a situation where the FPMT, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, donated a lot of money for a project, and that project was in Tibet, and the person that was entrusted with that, a Tibetan gentleman, I guess you could say, sort of absconded with the money. There's a lot, and it was okay. So this money was for a statue, so it was a holy object, you could say, so it was a virtuous project. You can even say for a non-profit or a charity. It's kind of the same sort of object in that sense of being something for others, right? Others' well-being, others' welfare. And he just disappeared, kind of, or didn't disappear, but he wasn't doing the project. And soon we saw that he was buying land and a house for himself and that kind of thing. So it was a classic case where of course, you would go and get an attorney and sue him. And I can't say you wouldn't ever do that, but the point of the story was that Lama Zopa Rinpoche told us as a board that we were not to pursue it. He said, and his explanation was, if you pursue it, you'll destroy his reputation. And if his reputation gets destroyed in Tibet, which is under Chinese control, his life and family will be really, really suffering and miserable. And then as becoming our own therapist, and stay in the theme, if we really think of, it's not that easy, but let's go back to where we started. And the idea is, what is the idea of becoming a therapist is to become mentally healthy, isn't it? Is for well-being, mental well-being. And so we have a different paradigm for what makes us happy. And as we look at the many, many myriad forms of people's philosophy on becoming happy, it comes from everything to, success and reputation and fame and, relationships, pleasure, drugs, alcohol, good life, all those things, doesn't it? Those are all different philosophies on how to be happy. And if we look at our own life, we should look at our own life and think, what is my personal philosophy on what makes me happy? And people always say, well, compassion and wisdom, not always say, but often, the Buddhists, the Dharma students will say things like that, or the spiritual seekers will say things like that. But that's not the way I mean it. The way I mean it is what do you do every day? What do you do every day after day, week after week, year after year? What is it what is it that we seek? Do we seek on a relationship with another person, and to create a family, and to have a nice, a good job, and to live in a good neighborhood, have enough resources? Now, all those things are important, don't get me wrong, but is that what we're really yearning for and working towards? If that is, and that's our philosophy on what makes you happy, isn't it? So again, not that doing those things, I'm not talking about having those things or pursuing those things, I'm talking about that those in the back of your mind, when you're not thinking, it's that we're conditioned to say, generally safety and pleasure are what make me happy. And it takes a while to say, no, it's mental well-being, it's contentment. I mean, that's in terms of Buddhist psychology, right? Buddhist psychology, in just a simplified way, we would say that Buddhist philosophy and psychology says that a mind that's in balance and content is a healthy mind, and a healthy mind is a happy mind. And happiness is the goal of all living beings. So that's the idea. So now going back to your estate, right? Which is, it could be your estate, could be that someone dinged your car and didn't leave a note. It can be that your partner left you. It could be that your kids are in trouble in school. It doesn't, it's all these, plethora of situations that present themselves. So if your mind is not disturbed, you can do anything in a way, right? If your mind is not disturbed, meaning now a lot of times people who are very insensitive would say my mind's not disturbed, or narcissists, right? So it's not, you can't just say, but it has to come down to motivation as well. So when we go back to, someone cheating us or taking advantage of our estate, for example, it's a very painful one, especially because it's connected with your mother, right? It doesn't matter, the details are not the important thing. It was just, you're very kind to bring up that situation, but it's not that different than someone cutting you off, cutting in front of you in the grocery line. Does the mind get disturbed or not? Right. When we look at Buddhist psychology, by the way, there's not just one size fits all. It depends on a person's temperament. So in a very broad sense, general sense, we have what's referred to as the Hinayana or the Theravada approach. And that approach to happiness is not exactly the same in terms of the Mahayana approach. It's not different. It's not in contrast to it. It's just a narrower interpretation. And then in the Mahayana, then we also have, the practice of the sutra, or the from the point of view of the scriptures. And then we have the approach of Tantra, right? Or the Tantrayana or Vajrayana. So when we take an example like getting cheated out of someone trying to cheat us, that the approach to that depends on what your vehicle is. That's what it means by vehicle. So how Mahayana, Hinayana, Vajrayana. So the word yana means vehicle, and vehicle just means your mental approach, where your mind fits into. Some people's mind fit very well into Hinayana approach, which is very much about protection through boundaries, protecting boundaries and rules. And for example, if one is struggling, let's say, if one is struggling, let's just say, so getting angry at this gentleman who's taking advantage, for example. So from a Theravada or Hinayana approach, the Theravada was one school in the Hinayana. It's the only one that's still surviving. So And Hinayana is not what Hinayanas call themselves, by the way. So, sometimes we should be a little bit sensitive to the fact that's sort of a Mahayana term, I guess, because it means narrow vehicle. But narrow is not so much pejorative. It's more from the point of view that, okay, so when you think about this guy, okay, who's disturbing my mind, right? So from a Hinayana point of view, what you do is you just know you have to protect your mind, right? And so you need to bring the mind back into balance through mindfulness meditation. And then you might protect yourself from putting up boundaries so that you don't talk to him, okay? And you don't deal with him. And you wish him happiness because that's because you don't want to, you're protecting your mind from generating ill will and anger. So that's a Hinayana approach. Is very much of a boundaries kind of approach. That makes sense. Guarding the mind in that way. So then we take a Mahayana approach, Sutrayana Mahayana, and we have things like the Lojong teachings, which are like thought transformation, for example. And in thought transformation, it's taking all the problems into the path. So now you're thinking, oh, this guy, my stepdad, rather than protecting my mind from him, rather than, not answering the phone and not answering his letters. And, that might be where we're at, by the way, because we get so irritated by it. We get so agitated. We get so angry. I get that. But from a Mahayana approach, because of understanding the nature of the mind in slightly expansive way, we're going to start thinking about almost, the bodhisattva, which is only the Mahayana practitioner, is actually looking for these difficult situations. See? So it's kind of like if someone's having trouble drinking, right? From the Hinayana approach, don't go into a bar, don't drink alcohol, don't associate people who drink with people who drink. Make sure your employer puts your paycheck straight into your bank where you can't touch it or something like that. That's the Hinayana approach. And your mind stays somewhat protected, right? Because you're not tempted to go have a drink. And at barbecues, you don't go to the barbecues and have a drink or drinking there, that sort of thing. Okay, that's a valid approach. From Mahayana point of view, that takes a really long time, though, to get over that. The problem is the alcoholic mind, right? That's the issue. So that approach does work. From the point of view of Mahayana, it takes a really long time, though, for that alcoholic mind to finally be purified. Okay. So in the Mahayana approach, it's thinking, well, the more skillful cycle. And again, when we're talking now, I'm doing most talking, sorry about that. But when we're talking, it's about psychology. Okay. We have to make clear, this is not religion. Okay. Psychology in terms of a spiritual practice in Buddhism, it's about psychology, isn't it? Taming the mind, training the mind, knowing the mind, like Lama Yeshe, those quotes we talked about last week with Lama Yeshe. So when you talk about Mahayana approach, all of a sudden it changes a little bit. It doesn't exclude the Hinayana approach, by the way. It doesn't exclude it. It just takes a more holistic point of view. So that in the case of the alcoholic now, it's the same idea that you're dealing with an afflictive mind. Okay, the problem is not in the alcohol. Okay, so in the Hinayana approach, you make sure there's no alcohol in the house, right? Make sure you don't, when you walk to work, you're not going past the liquor store. You're going to take another route, or past your friends, or going into the bar, at 5:30 every evening and have a drink or whatever. Do you just follow me? That's a Hinayana approach, and it's valid, especially when we're not very strong. But I have a question for all of you. Well, it's kind of rhetorical, I guess. Does that get rid of the alcoholic disorder, mind? Does it get rid of it out of your mind stream, out of your consciousness?
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't, right? You could say that if you did that approach for a very, very, very long time, very, 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 very long time, then maybe there's no foundation for the alcoholic mind to, desire for alcohol to arise again. That's possible, right? But it'd be long, long, long time. And that's why straight AA programs are risky. The AA only works for 10% of the population of the, at least the first time. But that's the best one. So it's kind of interesting. Anyway, so what does the Mahayanas do? So the Mahayana psychological approach is different. It's a lot like the approach, like if you get nervous with public speaking, or you're nervous during some sort of athletic event that you're engaged with, you get really nervous, like competition or fear, or like maybe fear. I had a client who was what would you say? Well, anyway, he would have panic attacks if he left Santa Cruz City by more than 20 miles.
I just competed this weekend and I had a panic attack right before I got on stage.
Okay. Oh, really? What was the competition?
I'm a professional pole dancer, so it was my first competition after the pandemic.
Okay, so
I got silver, by the way.
Oh, you got silver.
Yeah.
Okay, but what could you have done? Gotten silver without the panic?
You know what? Now that I started to trip out when you started to talk about this, because I don't think that I could have gotten silver without the panic. Because what made me happen, what happened was that it causes me to tense up my muscles a lot. So it causes me to be in opposition of my muscles. And for pole dancing, you need to have the poses are done with opposition, right? You're pulling and pushing.
Oh.
And so it allowed me to like hold my poses way longer than I had ever done it during rehearsal.
So
and I had to concentrate to the max. Like it was a really awesome experience, to be honest.
It was an awesome experience.
Yeah. And I have to say that like studying Tibetan Buddhism since August really, really helped.
Can you tell me what particular, tell me a little more about how did it help? Like what happened?
Because I had to meditate through the entire like sequence. And so the movement wasn't necessarily like, I didn't take movement as artistic value. I took it as like a meditative practice with breath. And so I had been practicing, because I had panic attacks before, but I hadn't been studying Buddhism. Mm-hmm. And so now I practice my movement with breath. And so every single movement has a breath that goes with it. And I choreograph breath and movement and music together.
Do you have to have the panic?
Maybe not. I'll tell you next competition.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'll let you know how it goes next time.
What I heard you say is that the winning formula was focus, mm-hmm. and sort of a functional level of tension. Was there something else?
Well, I think that in terms of the panic, if I don't have panic, then I don't think maybe the focus would be there.
Interesting. Now, because I sometimes can relate to what the panic feels like for me. Do you like that feeling?
No.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that you don't know how to access focus and tension without the energy of the panic.
Well,
is that what you're saying?
Right now, that's what I'll say. That's right now. I'll conclude that because I haven't had a competition. I'll have another competition in October. And at that point, then I'll be able to see how it feels before I go on stage. Mm-hmm. Without, hopefully, the panic, already preparing my mind and already dealing with the panic beforehand.
So do you know how, I'm guessing before the competition, you were nervous too, right? Like some days before, when you think about it?
Yeah, for about 2 weeks, I was nervous.
And what were you doing? And that nervous feeling was not, I mean, if it's like me, it's not a very good feeling, right? It's not something you would seek.
No. And actually, I had a panic attack one day, and I was like, I'm going to go practice right now because this is like the worst that I'm feeling. And if I practice right now at my worst and I
Mhm.
get through it, that means that I'll be able to get through it when I'm on stage.
So yeah, that's so right. That's adding like wisdom to it and experience. Let me build on that for a moment and see if for also Vanessa, what we were talking about earlier. So the Mahayana approach, the great vehicle approach, would be almost like happens sometimes in therapy, where there's a sense of embracing. So, but there's a different reason for a spiritual practitioner. There's a different motivation for embracing. When I say embracing, it can be embracing or it can be engaging. Okay, it can be engaging. It can be different things for different people at different times, but it's not the protection thing right now. So when we're getting kind of a little bit of panic, anxiety, and go, God, it doesn't feel good. It feels out of control. And then you go, okay, well, I've learned these breathing exercises. I've been breathing meditation, and I think I'll just do some mindfulness. Well, that's that lower approach, the Theravada, and it's valid, by the way. Again, I've said it 2 or 3 times. It is valid. Don't get me wrong. In order to develop the mind further, can you imagine? So I think you can get this. Can you think how powerful the mind will become if next time the panic is coming up, you sort of engage with it? So, but basically, panic, anxiety, nerves, you know what we usually want to do? We want to push it away, right? We don't want it. Okay. That gives the panic, the anxiety, the anger, actually gives it more energy. It gives it more reality. Because if we go deeper into the wisdom teachings that we touched on last week, that what you're afraid of and I'm afraid of doesn't really even exist that way. So now you begin to engage with the whole mental process and you start applying different points of view. In a way, we could say that's not that Theravada doesn't do that, but in the Mahayana, you jump right in there. And what I mean by that is and of course you could in the Hinayana Theravada approach too. It's hard to generalize too much, but in this case, it's like you feel the panic coming on, or you feel the anger coming on, Vanessa, with about the state or whatever. And we always have that, by the way. It doesn't matter when I say always. Unfortunately, it feels like always, but our goal is to never have it. But there's just new laboratories all the time for us, aren't there? Like I'm working with a board right now, and it's all these different personalities, and it gets tricky, right? You get irritated by that person doing that, and why is she doing this? And he was not supposed to, I was supposed to do that, not him. Why is he doing it? Why is he staying in his lane? And all that kind of stuff, right? It doesn't end. Is what I'm trying. I mean, it does end, but we can't wait for the situation to end. It's not going to be, I mean, it's nice when your estate is settled and goodbye to that guy, right? I get that. But the underlying attitude and anxiety or irritation hasn't gone away. That'll come up next time next situation it comes up, to allow it to arise. So in the Buddhist approach, the psychological approach, liberation means never having it come up again. So we're talking about liberation being the highest mental health that we can imagine. Okay, so when the Dalai Lama steps out in front of 20,000 people to give a talk, he's not nervous. And he's not nervous because he's done it so many times. He's not nervous because he doesn't have the point of view that would allow him to get nervous. So Buddhist psychology and Buddhist therapy is all about changing points of view. That's really all it is. And it's not easy because we have a habit. Years long habit, but we, in terms of Buddhist context, we say lifetimes, multiple, infinite lifetimes of habit. So we may not have a habit of lifetimes about being nervous in performing, but we do have a lifetime, endless lifetimes of being nervous about us feeling vulnerable and not safe. Okay, whether as a lizard or a chipmunk or a person, that's basic problem for every living being is protecting oneself. That's the challenge. So in the Mahayana, we go back to this thing about the nerves or about so now it's something like Vanessa will say, well, I'm not totally happy that my mind got so agitated by that guy, So in the Mahayana approach, you sort of go kind of like bring it on. The emotion I'm talking about. Advanced practitioners say bring on the person again, right? Go into the bar. Okay, you go back into the bar, not necessarily to drink, but you want to confront the alcoholic mind. So it takes a lot of courage. Okay, it takes a lot of courage. It takes strength. We can't be naive. We might not be able to do it, but we think we can, and we might be able to. Then that's okay. So it's about putting ourselves in difficult situations. That's a Mahayana approach. And the reason we do it is we become very convinced, and it takes a long time. I can't say even I'm convinced that what I really want is to be free of negative, afflictive minds, mental disorders. I'm not 100% sure that that's the true way. You know what I mean? I'm talking about in behavior. Because if I was, then I wouldn't get an argument with that guy again. When I know that, so we do get hooked. So next time, Vanessa, you just will get hooked less, but maybe not at all. Or maybe it's a process, where it's going to take a while, or getting nervous before a performance, right? It might take a little longer, but to get better and better. I think that. Do you think you can be not panicky and still be able to focus and be have the right kind of tension? Orlando?
I'm thinking about that because when I teach, I'm not nervous.
Yeah, and you're a
And
good
I'll teach
teacher.
the same, and I'll teach the same choreography, but I don't know, I think the level of like perfection that is required for competition, I think I do appreciate having a little bit of nervousness and panic.
Couldn't you have joy? I'm just wondering, could you have joy and excitement?
Yeah. I mean, definitely when the run was over, I was like, whoa, that was amazing.
Yeah, but was that wow, is amazing? Was that in relief, as a sense of relief?
It was a sense of like, I can't believe it felt that good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can't convince you yet. That's okay. That you might not need the anxiety.
No, I like thinking that I don't need the anxiety. I can tell you in October.
Okay, I'm gonna test you. Okay. I'm gonna show you guys something now. Because I'm talking so much. Anyone else have something to say, by the way? Did that make any sense about the Mahayana, Hinayana? Now, just to put a little sort of seal on that, in the Vajrayana, the Tantra approach, which is a Mahayana path, it's just a different approach. It's really about taking all this energy. It's just seeing things as energy. So whether it's panic or fear, it's seeing it as energy and rechanneling it to a more awakened and productive state of mind. Okay, so that really has to do with its main, I guess you'd say, theme is energy. Okay. Okay.
Oh, and I can't remember what it is, but it goes something to the effect of, you know, everybody has fear, and courage is working through that fear and still doing what you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that, because courage, it's exactly right. Courage doesn't mean not having fear, does it? Courage means having confidence. You know, that you're not going to be, that you can work through the thing. So, for example, in performance, you know, whether you got to make a presentation or whether you have to do a performance, the opposite of courage is that negative mind that's panicking, saying, I can't do it, I'm going to fail, I can't do it. And do you ever notice that can go on and on and on and on and on, and you think it's real? You think all that voice is saying is real. Do you know what I mean? Do you ever like obsess like that? No one else does it but me.
I obsess on other things, but usually not on anxiety.
Well, what does it? What you obsess on? Does it make you anxious?
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah. So here's I'm going to go back to just where we left off last week. Is that okay? Because I want to draw it into showing the psychology of it. To find the right one. Okay. Okay, so this is not exactly where I didn't cover. So when we look at either modern psychology or Western psychology, Buddhist psychology, we're looking at the way that suffering is defined. Okay, and the fact that I think in modern culture, it's not very common to say that we're in the nature of suffering, is it? They don't say that, right? That's not so common. Yeah. So in the Buddhist, we talked about last time or time before that's our basic nature, is in the nature of dissatisfaction, of struggle, of repeating problems. And then what is happiness? And are we? You know, it's so funny because I was with this was years ago. This guy, was an older gentleman, was much older than me, and it's probably about, well, I just written The Misleading Mind, and this guy I think he's pretty well off, but he's really super cheap. And I'm walking along with him. We actually was playing golf with him, and he said to me, you know, I read your book. And I said, you read my book? Like, kind of shocked, because he's very, very, very right wing. For example, he's very, you know, conservative and, you know, not that kind of guy, I guess I would say. And I said, what do you mean you read my book? He said, yeah, I read your book. And he said, you know, I don't agree with that thing you say in that book about we're in the nature of suffering. You know, I just don't buy it. I said, well, how did you read the book? I mean, he says, oh, you know, you go to Amazon, it says, look inside this book. And I clicked that. And, you know, you can read every other page for like the first 2 chapters. So that's how I got. So anyway, he says to me, I don't buy that stuff. You know, he says, I don't know what you mean by suffering. He says, I'm happy. And I was kind of stumped. I thought, okay, I didn't communicate it well enough in the book, right? Well, or he missed that page, more likely that, I guess. And I said, what do you mean? He says, yeah. He says, I'm happy. Look, I divorced my 3rd wife. So I'm completely on my own now. I can do what I want when I go home. I can play golf every day if I want without anybody nagging me. I go home and I have a scotch and I have a drink, and then I can watch sports whenever I want, and then go to bed when I want, get up when I want, play golf when I want, like that. So I realized that I didn't articulate the meaning of happiness very well, because this is how people think, isn't it? That's pretty common description. And what do you say about that? You know, what do you say is, definitely for me, when he was telling me that, I kind of cringed, because I saw it as, I guess, suffering, but maybe suffering is not the right word. Confusion. What do you think? I want to get some reaction. Let me get rid of this thing for a second. Do I have it wrong? Does Buddhism have it wrong? And this guy had it right?
I think it was his opinion. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. His opinion, but what is opinion? Yeah, but what's the truth?
I think we all have our own truths.
What was he missing? Or wasn't he missing anything?
In his mind, he was happy.
In his mind, he was happy.
From his side, right?
So then in the chipmunk's mind, it's happy. That's good enough?
For the chipmunk, it is, maybe. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because while you were telling that story, it just made me think about living somewhere like Los Angeles for 32 years, where there is so much wealth here.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone I know that is what we would say successful, no one seems satisfied. They're always looking for something else. It doesn't matter how many houses they have, how many cars they have, how much money they have. And I cannot put my finger on it, but it just seems that I really can't say if I know anyone that is just satisfied with what they have.
So that's what we're talking about, Brian. Thank you. So exactly. So we have to remember, everybody. I know people have been in and out of the class, so I don't, some things. Remember, we have to define what we're doing here. We have to define mental well-being. We have to define. So I am using mental well-being and as a synonym for happiness. Okay. So is a chipmunk have a state of mental well-being? Does this guy, his name is Ben, by the way, does he have a state of mental well-being? And by the way, right after he said this, he started.
Uh-oh.
You missed the good part.
Yeah.
You froze when you were gonna.
Oh, okay. Did you hear what I said?
Oh, we didn't.
Oh, I froze. I said when the good part I left out was the moment after we had this discussion, playing golf, he started complaining about the group ahead of us being so slow, and it was taking all day to play this round of golf, and he had to get home to see the Giants game on TV, even though he did record it, but he wouldn't have enough time so that he could cook his steak on his barbecue on his deck while they overlooked, could see the sunset. Do you see what I'm saying? So we have to define happiness. It doesn't do any good. In the DSM-5, I mentioned sometimes I'm mentioning that it's the diagnostic statistical manual for therapists and psychologists, and it has 294 disorders and not one diagnosis for happiness. Not one. Now you read the introduction and you read all the earlier parts of it. There are the explanations, and there's no what are we doing? All they talk about is the major depressive disorder, anxiety disorder, trichotillomania, bipolar disorder, on and on and on and on. But okay, I get it that those all that the book is saying is we're in the nature of suffering, and then non-suffering, which I guess means happiness, is being free of those particular mental disorders. That is not the Buddhist definition of happiness. Buddhist psychological definition of happiness. And we talked about in Buddhist psychological definition of happiness, we talked about the three sufferings of being the suffering of suffering, which means this, we have pain, right? We have pain, we get older, we have emotional distress. Then we have the suffering of change, which means nothing lasts, which was what I think Brian was alluding to. You know, it's like more and more and more, but there's no moment, there's not much moment of contentment. You know, it's amazing to me how exciting it is. You know, you get your new Tesla, but you know, your new Tesla or your new Prius or your new car 15 years ago, you know, it's exciting, it's interesting, it's fascinating, it's engaging, but it doesn't provide any real happiness after, well, with a Tesla, it might last a month or something, you know, but you know what I'm trying to say. I mean, you know, it does, there's really no, if it was really the cause of happiness, every time you drove your Tesla and had it, you would be happy. We all know that it fades. You know, you look at a junkie, you know, with all the cars there, what do you call that? Junkyard place, you know, with all the cars that are all crushed down. Every single one of those was new. And every single one of those, probably the person was in love with it. Look at my new car. Come on over and see my car. Hey, let's go for a ride. And now you look at it, like even a car that's 10 years old, you look at it and go, I mean, I look at, you know, when you watch older movies, you can't believe when you were in that era, you thought the cars were so fantastic. Now you look at those cars, they look like dumps or something. You know, you wouldn't want to have one unless you went into a classic car thing. Same thing with houses. Same thing with everything, just about. So what is the definition of happiness? That can't be it. It can't be these momentary wins. And that's what ordinary folks think it is. And so it's like, let's go to Napa Valley this weekend and, you know, spend some spa time and get some good meals, California cuisine, whatever. Paul, I don't know, Paola, where do you, somewhere there in Japan, I don't know what the equivalent of Napa Valley is. Where is everybody else? Brian's in LA. Vanessa, where are you?
Orange County.
Orange County. And then Orlando, where are you?
I'm in Albuquerque.
Oh, that's right. And sorry, is it Zayla? Oh,
Shayla.
Wait, I see you put it in phonetics for us. It says Shayla.
Shayla.
Where are you?
I'm in northern Utah, just outside of Park City.
Okay, so we're all fairly local. So Paola way over there in Japan and looking so relaxed, by the way. So wouldn't you say that that's what we're hypnotized by? We're hypnotized. It's not our
Veronica,
fault. Yeah,
may I leap in?
of course.
I think it's very telling what you said about your golf partner.
Mm-hmm.
I think that quite simplistic concept, even for very intelligent people, I'm assuming this person was not stupid.
Correct.
Like they have to keep that, we all have to keep that thing going with, I've got my house, I've got my health, I've got my car, I've got a stash of money in the bank, therefore it's okay. And I think it's because we all know, we're intelligent enough to know that when we go deeper and look at ourselves, it's very painful and it's never ending.
Yeah.
So nobody wants to go there, right? So they just stay at the illusory, superficial level. It's much safer. It makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you. when I was training in narrative therapy, which is not a Buddhist, not a spiritual path, but it did give me a language to talk from Buddhist psychology. And narrative therapy is what's referred to as a constructivist therapy theory. They don't like to call themselves a theory at all, but basically they believe that problems are merely constructed. Sounds very Buddhist, right? Which it is. And so, but they say something very, so part of the therapy is you work on deconstructing problems. But they say it's extremely important that you don't just deconstruct, because if you just deconstruct, you leave people with nothing. So the deconstruction has to be within the context of reconstructing. So I often thought about my mother, and it would be immoral, unethical for me to deconstruct. She's a regular person, right? I mean, in that sense of her worldview was, anyway, just normal kind of, success and a glass of wine in the evening, and go to the Dodger game and socialize and stuff like that. Whatever her, she was a materialist. She was a good person. But I couldn't tell her it was all false, because what would she would need something to replace it. I couldn't tell her, Mom, what you're doing is just in the nature of suffering. You're never going to be happy doing that. Some Buddhist students, spiritual people, they do that with their parents. Have you seen that? It's really wrong. It's actually, it's kind of violent, is what I would say. Because it's
Sorry, what do they do with their parents?
They try to convert them
To Buddhism or just any religion in general?
religion. Because we have a sort of a mini awakening, right? Or many of them maybe, and then you see your parents as being very ignorant, and probably out of our love for them, our care and concern, then we want them to get on the bandwagon. But it doesn't work that way. It just does not work that way. And people often, I have 3 grown children, and they all turned out really well. And the 2 are pretty strong Buddhists. And the other one is a Buddhist, but less practicing. And people always ask me, how'd you get your kids to practice Buddha, be Buddhists? And I said, the way we did it was by not doing it. Because I looked around, and how many people do we know who they call themselves recovering Catholics or recovering Jews or whatever, that, oh yeah, my parent, I don't go to church anymore. I had to go as a kid, and we thought about that a lot, and or at least I did, and thought, well, I have a story in my book, A Misleading Mind, about when I was here in the States. I'd been here I returned in 1988. And I was going to graduate school, and then I was going to start working up at Stanford. I needed a new car. And I was going over to San Jose to look at a Mazda. And in those days, remember classified ads? And the classified ads are sitting on the passenger seat, and you're looking at it, and then where's the address? And right above M is L, HIJKLM. And Lexus had just been formed a few years before. And it had an ad for a Lexus. I said, well, what's a Lexus, And it was a used one. And so I thought, okay, I didn't know they were a luxury car or anything. But it was a teaser, right, to get you to come onto their lot. And so I stopped in on the way there, and I'm looking at this car, and I'm walking around their lot, and no salesman's really coming up, or salesperson's coming up to me. And so it's fine. I went into their office, and I said, oh, is there anyone else? Oh, sure. And the guy comes out, and he says, said, would you like, he didn't say much. He just said, we'd like to take it for a test drive. And I remember it was a 5-speed, and I said, sure, why not? And I didn't have any intention of buying this thing but I was curious what these cars were. And we took it for a drive and get on the freeway. Says, okay, well, get into 5th gear, see how you can see the performance of the engine. And then he says, okay, get off this off ramp, because, it has a nice sharp turn. You can see how it steers. And we did this whole thing for about 20 minutes, came back to the parking lot. He came around, he shook my hand. He said, okay, if you have any questions, I'm inside. And I'm thinking, what the hell? It's like, and so I went back inside and I said, I'm kind of interested. What's the best price you could do? He gave me, he worked down a little bit, and I ended up buying the car. And at the end, I said to him, what is it with you guys? He says, what do you mean? I said, where's the hard sell? And he said to me, the product sells itself. Okay. That should be our spiritual path. Buddhism, whatever it is, of Christianity, I mean, it should just sell itself. We should be the models of it. And if we're not the role models, then, it's not a very good example. Who's going to buy that product when we're out of control? Okay. One last, we got a few more minutes. Another quick story. I was at a golf tournament a few weeks ago down in Palm Springs, and there was a guy there who's a Buddhist. And as we leave, I know he's driving back to Santa Cruz. It's about 7-8 hour drive. And he's a very aggressive driver. He's a very fast driver. And I was going to the airport. I was flying up. And I was going to the airport with a few other buddies. And we're driving along to the airport, and someone points out, who's this guy tailgating over? Wow, he's really aggressive. Who is this guy? And we're going along, and I said, oh, it's so-and-so. And I said, what? What's he doing? He's like right on that guy's butt. And then all of a sudden, he started honking at the guy ahead of him. He was not tailgating, but honking like that. And I was sitting there going, these guys who I'm in the car with are not Buddhists. They're very nice people. But what are they thinking? What's that thing that Gandhi said? Be the change you wish to see. I mean, you don't have to say much. We just have to learn to be an example. And until then, I think it's better to not say so much. Like me, I shouldn't talk so much because I am not that good of an example. So if we can just say, so now what makes a good example is the psychology, healthy people. Okay. Healthy people. So when Vanessa told me a little bit of her story, I was thinking about, kind of have a sense of respect for you because you were really trying to do the right thing. And doing the right thing, now I have a question. So doing the right thing is sometimes from the Judeo-Christian approach is sort of a morality bash, isn't it? Like, it's not good to do. Why isn't it good? Because, religion says so, Jesus said so, Buddha said so. That's not we should not have that as approach. If I ask Vanessa, why did you not confront and get an attorney? And if Vanessa said to me, because it's just negative, it will make him unhappy, it'll make me unhappy. That's a healthy psychological approach. Because vengeance never gets you anything anyway, from the point of view of peace of mind. There's many, many stories. We go on and on. So, did I talk too much? Is that too much information? No. How do we get there, though? Now, so if I'm gonna make Vanessa my hero today. So I'm gonna say Vanessa was able to do that because she studies these ideas and is working at training her mind and making it better. And I think that same with Erlanda, it just check up this next, well, you're not gonna have performance till October, but how would you like to be? That's what it comes down to. How would you like to be?
I'd like to have the same focus and the same tension, but the panic can go.
Good. What impact would you like? What impact would you like to have on others?
A positive one.
Okay. What could that?
in terms of my performance?
Yeah. Well, that's what we're talking about. I mean, that's where you're at.
So
Yeah.
with my performance itself, I would like for them to shift their perspective of pole dancing.
Okay. And what would you like that perspective to be?
To be taken as a serious expressive art form.
Okay. And how how would that be a positive thing? I'm not doubting it is. How would that be a positive thing?
It would help sex workers achieve a more equitable status in society.
Good. And less exploitation
Yes.
and less treated as an object.
Yes.
So those are good things.
I believe so.
Yeah. So that's how you can go. So I don't think panic will help do that as much as poise, probably, and poise and confidence and maybe a sense of equanimity from your side.
Yeah, I mean I should say the performance happened in the theater.
Uh-huh.
So it's
So-
shifting the focus of a particular group of people in a artistic setting.
So who, again, if you think about who do you need to be to have that positive impact?
I think poise is absolutely correct.
Mhm.
Collected, clear mind, articulate.
Okay, what about, well, this might be going too far. I can't help thinking of Will Smith, but anyway, what about arrogance? I know it's kind of a leading question, but anyway, if you think about arrogant performers, prima donnas and that kind of thing, they don't seem to have a very positive effect, do they?
No, but they're popular.
Yes. So what do you want? You want popularity or do you want to have a positive effect?
I want to have a positive effect.
Okay, so remember that, right? Yeah, that's exactly the point. Exactly. That's where, so to have a positive effect means having a positive state of mind, a positive presence. Okay. Then work backwards from there. What creates a positive presence? I'm asking you, not in the sense you have to answer right now, but to think about, well, when you think, well, for me, my heroes, my teachers, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the Dalai Lama, and others, there's other people, that are my heroes, that their presence has a really profound effect on me. And I'm not tricked into thinking that it has to do with their state of mind. It has to do with their state of mind. And I'm not talking about everyone impresses me as some enlightened being. I don't mean that. But there's something, and I think what tends to be is they're just working on developing the quality of their mind. And they can still be students and practitioners, but just trying, don't you know what I mean? Just trying, being sincere. Any questions? I didn't get even into the slide. I'm like the worst teacher. I gotta bring up the slide for like 3 seconds and then it's not even. Well, you guys are bad because you don't let me progress through these slides at all. I think we're on the third one or something. I can, is there anything you would like me? I mean, I get inspired, by questions that you bring up and stuff like that, but I really want to be helpful too. I mean, there's a lot of content I can deliver. I'm not sure content is exactly the best thing. Maybe you're looking for more content like philosophy and the theory, psychological theory. Are you looking for more like that kind of stuff?
I haven't, when you mentioned earlier about like being happy and just, wanting more, golf buddy, or, saying, the nice house and the wine or whatever. It just seems like, and that's, his definition of happiness, which is different from yours or Buddhism's definition of happiness. But, I've studied the Buddhism interpretation of happiness, whereas the typical person has more like a hedonic style of happiness, where it's like get the car, get the new
Right.
house, the relationship, and go on these vacations. But it's so hard to engage in the Buddhism interpretation of happiness when at work, like I'm surrounded, everyone is talking about what they're doing, when they did this. And it's like, when I'm having kids and this and my, kid this, it just seems like it's hard to practice that kind of
Yeah.
happiness when everyone around you. One solution is just, don't engage, but then again, it's like you're isolating yourself.
No. Yeah, and that's we're not really asking. We are saying engage, but I think what we're talking about is engage differently. Engage, and you do. There is possible that you'll lose some friends, because the friends were like, I often tell a story. When I first got involved in spiritual stuff, I was a young person in Los Angeles, and I was very into the LA hippie scene. Did a lot of acid, going up in Laurel Canyon and Topanga Canyon, and tripping around, and the surfing, and so I did a lot of drugs and that kind of stuff. And but I was looking for something. I was looking for, like, I think everybody is looking for happiness. And I don't know, just through that, I guess, luck, I was really interested. What is meditation? Became very interested. And then one weekend, I went to a yoga retreat, which is very unusual, right? This is in the beginning. This is 72 or 73. No, it's not 72. I guess it's more like 74. And in one weekend, after that weekend, I quit eating meat. I quit smoking cigarettes. I quit smoking dope. I quit doing drugs. And I lost all my friends in one weekend. One guy, Dave stuck by me to some degree, because I didn't fit with their idea of what, I'm going to say it in a very simplistic way, but I think it's important. I didn't fit in with their philosophy on what makes you happy. Okay. Philosophy being party on the weekends, go surfing, cut school, go drop acid up in Topanga Canyon, whatever, right? I didn't fit. And I lost all my friends. And I had a lot of friends. People used to come to my house every weekend to get high, because my house was safe. They could do that. Not my parents. They didn't know. But did you see what I'm saying, Vanessa? So, but I would look at Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa, and they're monks, so it's a little different. But you don't make people uncomfortable. You just practice quietly. And you be kind. Just be kind. So in those situations, you just become. But I'm not trying to. I think I can't sugarcoat the fact that you do begin to feel maybe a little lonely and isolated in certain contexts. Brian, do you have that experience?
Yeah, and what I've noticed in the last couple of years is I'm a flight attendant. I've been doing it for 39 years. Until next year, I'm going to retire next year.
Oh, congratulations.
And you know how, well, you've read the news, you've seen what's been going on. And
yeah,
it just made me realize that I look at this plane full of 200 people and the delusions, and that made Buddhism more real for me, because I really understood, well, these people are looking for happiness, but they're acting up, they're acting out. And it's been a very scary 2 years for me. I've never seen anything like this before in my entire career. And I think it's like Shayla, who was in law enforcement, you get to a point where I can't be around that toxicity anymore. But it made me understand how everyone is suffering.
Yeah.
And you do feel isolated. You do feel like, well, am I the only one that kind of, not that it's easy. I mean, I understand the logic. It seems very logical, the Buddhist psychology. but then applying it, that's the hard work.
It's very hard. It's very
Very
hard.
hard.
So applying the psychology to so you can, I kind of like this idea that a spiritual practitioner, from my definition, and I think the Buddhist definition, is someone who applies the psychology. So it's not about yoga and meditation and angels and pure realms and that all stuff's all there. But a spiritual practitioner is someone who is not convinced like 100%, but just kind of knows that the inner world is where it's at, that my answers are going to be coming from inside, that my happiness is coming from internal work, that most of the external world is kind of bullshit. It's not what it appears to be. That my mind itself is creating reality. And the more you practice, it's very exciting. And I will promise you, it is lonelier. Lama Yeshe used to say to us, I don't know why you people feel so, why you all Western people suffer from loneliness. So we're already suffering from it, by the way. It's not that Buddhism makes us suffer more about it. It just opens up that we're alone, in many ways. He says, I don't know. He says, I never feel lonely because all around me, there are countless bodhisattvas and Buddhas around me. And that's true. We just don't see them maybe right away but that's a level reality that we're not living in, and that because we don't live in that, we are living in a reality that we think is true, but it's not. And I often talk about the example of, if you have pets, right, a dog or cat, and you would never eat cat food unless you were starving. But when you put the cat food down or dog food down on the ground, they go crazy, right? It's the most amazing thing and beautiful, most pleasurable thing for a dog. For the bodhisattva, the meditator, the practitioner, when he sees us so excited about finally getting those pretzels on the plane, that because of the delay, took so long, or going on the vacation, right? For them, they think that's like us looking at dogs and being excited about dog food, because it doesn't really give any lasting pleasure, the holiday, the vacation. And it's so sad, because people will work for 3, 4, 5 years, save up the money to go to Egypt to see the pyramids. And so I think, Brian, I get the feeling when I'm on those kinds of sometimes when I'm in that kind of a setting, like on the plane or something, I get extremely sad. I get very, very, very sad. And I just wonder how many people realize that they're going to be dead in a minute, not from the crash. This life is like an instant. So in light of the fact that we're going to be dead in our next life very quickly, what is it that matters? I'll leave you there. I went over 10 minutes. That's kind of unfair, huh? Okay, so I thank you very much for bringing that up, everybody, and allowing me to use your examples to think about. And see you next week if we don't die first. Okay. And remember, that think about how we spent this time together, an hour and 10 minutes or so, and we generated all these countless, many, many millions and millions of imprints upon our consciousness. These imprints will ripen in the future for sure, but to have them ripen in a way that generates peace in the world and peace in our mind, as well as develops our mind in the development of spiritual path of health, then we dedicate it towards that, so that we can be of great benefit to others, that even by walking in a room, they benefit from us. Even by seeing your performance, they benefit. Even by, in terms of, well, you're not in law enforcement, I guess, anymore, are you? But, even just anyone that sees you, hears you, thinks about you, gets a meal from you, a cup of tea from you, they benefit and they reach, it's unbelievable. They enter the spiritual path because of you. Okay, so think like that. Okay, thank you so much. Good night.